everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I would love it for you to subscribe if you're new. On this channel I do all things homeschooling, a little bit of motherhood and lifestyle. And in today's video I was like trying to think, and it dawned on me that I don't think I have ever done like a homeschooling 101, how to start, where to begin type of video, just with that kind of basic information on if you're thinking about homeschooling, if you're in the process of starting down the road of homeschooling your kids, where do you even start? Where do you even begin? So I will say we've been homeschooling now for 9 years. A lot has changed in the last 9 years. Obviously, a lot more people are homeschooling now, way more than, well, I mean, I would say technically there probably are more people homeschooling now. It is a lot more talked about. It's a lot more, I would say, even accepted as an option. When I started homeschooling, there was nobody that I knew, like nobody that I knew in my circle of anybody, or of a friend of a friend of a friend who homeschooled. So that was the first thing. But also in terms of just finding out information, gathering resources, and trying to just, you know, figure out what do I even do? Where do I even start? It was very, very limited. And I probably had like 2 sites that I was able to gather any information on. One of them being Confessions of a Homeschooler. She was the most pivotal in helping me just to even know where to even begin, what homeschooling could even look like. Because I will say, I think I was guilty, like a lot of people, to sort of try to emulate public school. Like I was thinking, okay, I'll take my kids out of public school and then I'll just like do it at home. It never dawned on me, which sounds crazy, but it never dawned on me that like I could just make homeschooling whatever I wanted to make it. And it wasn't about trying to replicate what public school was doing. So anyway, Confessions of a Homeschooler, she's had her site. I believe it's still up, and she doesn't really do a lot of homeschooling content now, but I think it's all still up on her site as far as I know, and even on her YouTube channel. I haven't really checked. I know she's kind of doing some other things now. Most of her kids, I think she still has kids that are homeschooling, but I know a couple of her kids are already, I think, graduated, so her content has changed. But she's a wealth of knowledge because she has been doing it for a long time. Everything you can think of, she had either written an article about or had a video about, and so that is where I got a lot of my information from. But aside from that, there was not a lot. Like, it wasn't like now where you can find a video on anything, you can find an article on anything. At the same time, it can be overwhelming, you know, especially I think when you're new to all of this and you are just trying to figure out where to start. I am here to say, before I get into anything, is to try to just like narrow it down a little bit and not to watch 100 different videos on homeschooling, as much as it can be exciting and you kind of want to know all the things and do all the things. I would say that's probably not the best thing you can be doing, but we'll get to that in a minute. If you've decided that you want to homeschool, or you're thinking about possibly homeschooling, the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out what the homeschool laws are where you live. So as for me, I live in Canada. So I live in Canada and we live in Ontario. So my laws and the regulations and things here are going to be very different from where you live. And I know it's different depending on the country you live in. It's different from state to state. It's different from province to province. So even within Canada, you know, where I live is very different from someone else living in a different province. Now for us, I mean, we're lucky. I'm very thankful because it ended up that, you know, when we kind of started on this journey, and like I said, I had no clue what was going on. It's pretty relaxed here. There's not a lot we have to do with the exception of sending in our homeschool letter. And that is really, that's really it. So I would say that's as relaxed as you can get. The best place to kind of figure all that out, I have to always look at it because I always get the letters mixed up, but it's the HSLDA. It'll give you literally all of the sort of legal information that you need to know. You can type in your country, you can type in your state, your province, wherever you live, and it'll pull up a page that'll tell you everything that you need to know in terms of requirements, what you're supposed to do, what you're obligated to do, any kind of record keeping you have to keep, any of that kind of stuff, check-ins, whatever it is that pertains to where you live. Now, I have utilized that site, but if you happen to be watching this and live in Ontario, you can go to the OFTP site, which is the Ontario Federation of Teaching Parents. That is specific to Ontario. But again, if you use the other site, everything is there as well. It will tell you everything you need to know. Now, for everybody pretty much across the board, you do have to send in your homeschooling letter of intent, your letter of intent to homeschool, which is basically you're telling, your school board that you are going to be homeschooling your child at home. Now, regardless of whether your child has attended public school before or not, you still have to send in the letter. Now, usually it's not till about age 6 that a child is required to be enrolled in school. So up until that point, even if you're doing things at home with them, like you've maybe officially started homeschooling them, up until age 6, you don't typically have to send in a letter. But when they're 6 years old and on, you have to inform the state, the province, that you are intending to keep your child at home to homeschool them. You have to figure out what your school board is. Again, if your child is already enrolled, then that would probably be easier for you. But this is all stuff that you could look up, what your school board is. And then there's actually on those 2 sites that I mentioned, on either or, they have the templates there. You can go straight to the link and you can download or print out, however you want to do it, the letter of intent to homeschool. It's all written out for you. You just have to fill in the blanks with like your name, your information, your contact information, the name of your child, and obviously your signatures and everything, basically saying that you are in fact, you're keeping your child home because you intend to homeschool them at home. And actually, like, because when we started homeschooling, I had 2 children in school. I guess I technically had 3. My one daughter went for like barely any time, but we actually informed the school as well. We didn't like have to, but we had a relationship with the school and their teachers and stuff, and so we just went ahead and did that on our own. But again, that's your discretion. You don't have to do that. Once you send in your letter of intent to homeschool, you'll get a response back, either by email or an actual letter in the mail, basically with them just confirming that they received your letter and like approving the fact that you are going to be doing this. And you just want to keep that for your records in case anything was to happen. You can say, look, like, they know I sent in the letter, everything is good to go. And once you've done that, you're basically free and clear. Now, usually every single year, you resend in that letter for that next year. So you're gonna wanna send it in a little bit ahead of time before kind of the new school year starts. That's usually what we do, because you may be adding children to your list or whatever. So we do that yearly, and then you have that covered for that school year. After that, basically, like, my advice would be that you, especially if you have sent your child to public school or any kind of like school outside of your home, you may want to take a little bit of time with them, even if it's in the middle of the year, depending on when this all occurs. You may want to take a bit of time to kind of almost de-school them. And what I mean by that is it's an adjustment. Like, even if you're thrilled about it and they're thrilled about it, and all the pieces have fallen into place and it's all good on everybody's part, kind of want to get into the mindset of this new setup that is going to be occurring. And like I said, it was very much like this thing in my mind where I felt like I was going to be trying to recreate the experience in what my kids had going to a public school at home. Quickly realized that that was the furthest thing that I wanted to do. Now, for us, when we pulled our kids out of school, everybody has their own reason. I think that that's the thing that you want to figure out for you. What is the reason behind wanting to homeschool your children? It can be a very personal reason for each family. Sometimes it's just a matter of feeling that that's what you're called to do, and that was what it was in my case, because honestly, my kids had a pretty positive experience at their schools. For the most part, they loved their teachers. We never really had anything that occurred. There was nothing that triggered us feeling like we had to pull our kids out of school suddenly. It was more just me just having this feeling and this calling I felt to just keep my children at home, for me to be the primary person who was educating them and in control of what they were learning, and also having more time with them and being able to also integrate other things into their learning experience and giving them the freedom to learn at their own pace, their own learning style, also the freedom to do other things. So there was a lot of reasons why we did it, but I think once you get your why, then you're going to want to sort of let that lead you in the direction that you're going to be going in your homeschool. And, you know, again, depending on how old your children are, you may be starting from the very start. You may be doing it halfway through their school education. I think it's important that you get to know your children's learning style. And I'm going to kind of like try to stay away from the labels and the terms, like the technical terms that people use, because honestly, if you asked me, like, what kind of homeschool do you do? Charlotte Mason, nature study, all this stuff, I still don't even know where we fit in. And I don't spend too much time trying to even like figure out what all those things mean, because it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I don't really care, to be honest with you. I choose our curriculum based on what's important to us, what we value, what we want to get out of that curriculum, what works for each of my kids, what works for us as a family unit, what is the most enjoyable for us. Like, I have my own criteria for picking things, and I don't really care that much what umbrella of learning it falls under. So that's my like tip to you. You might be thinking, where do I even begin? It's good to watch people and to see videos, and maybe like if you sort of can feel like a connection to somebody you watch and think like, oh, I think my child would enjoy that too, whatever they're showing or talking about. That's a great jumping off point. But again, like, I think if you do too much of that, it can be, now you have like 27 math programs and you're like, I don't know which one to pick. Do you know what I mean? I think once you've kind of landed on a few that you might want to choose from, you try them. You really just try them, and you're not going to know until you try it for your own family and for your own kids. But I would suggest that you don't spend a lot of money. I think it's like anything else. Like you go into any kind of hobby or subject or anything here on YouTube or social media, and you know, there's so many like extremes, and I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying, look, I love to read and I'm all about the books, and I feel like you can never have too many books, but it's like easy to just like see that and think you need so many books to be able to enjoy reading, more books than you even have time to read. And it can be the same thing with curriculum, and I'm guilty of it myself. Like, I see all the shiny new curriculum and I want to try it all, even now after all these years. That could be a lot for you and for your kids, and unnecessary money that you don't need to spend, especially now more than ever. So many companies offer like free trials of programs, or even The Good and the Beautiful. I can't sing their praises enough, but they have so much of their curriculum that is free, like the full-on year, the full-on level, to download for free on PDF. You can print it out. I still use that a lot, even now, because it saves a ton of money. And if by chance you happen to change your mind, if something doesn't work for you, you know what I mean? It's not like you don't feel stuck, because it's like, oh, I spend like $50 on this curriculum, and now what am I supposed to do? Not use it? Sometimes it does take a little bit of time for you to get an idea of what works for your children, but I would say just like ease into it. You don't have to do all of it on day one. So that's just a little bit of like extra added advice there. And then alongside with that, I sort of mentioned the whole record keeping, depending on where you live. Now, I don't have to clock hours. I don't have to do a certain amount of schooling every day. Now, with that being said though, I kind of like to just cover my bases. And so I still, like, we have a plan. I have a planner that I keep, that I, you know, keep track of what we do every day. Now, that is partially just to keep me organized and to let me see where everybody is at in their work, all that kind of stuff day to day. But in the back of my mind, I do that as well, because it is a form of record keeping. You can see every single year, every single week, every single day what each of my kids have done, how many pages in each book, what subjects we tackled, whatever. So, you know, if I always just think, if at any point, if for some reason they came knocking on our door and they were like, how do we know you're actually homeschool? You know, I could do that. I could show them all the things. Also, I do keep a certain amount of their work. Yes, some of it's just for like keepsakes, but honestly, I keep a little more just, again, as like proof that we do in fact, we don't just sit around all day and do nothing. So I just do that. I don't have to, but I do that. But you'll have to see, because it'll be very specific where you live. It'll talk about what exactly they want you to do, and you may have to submit this work. Now, sometimes you do it and you just kind of keep it, and other times they will actually ask you to submit certain things. It could be quarterly, it could be at the end of every year. That's something you're going to have to figure out, and, you know, start on it from day one, figure out how you're going to do that. Probably keeping everything in a binder would be the best way to keep track of it all, consolidate it all in one spot. You definitely don't want to you don't want to get behind on that. And then in terms of like community, unpopular opinion here, but we've never been part of a homeschool co-op or any kind of homeschool group at all. Part of that is the fact that we've moved quite a few times, and so it's been a little hard. The other thing is, again, up until recently, that wasn't even really a thing. It was not easy for me to try to find. Like, there was not, remember, like I said, there was not even people I knew in real life that were homeschooling. So never mind, homeschool groups was not a thing. That is more so now, for sure. I'm at the stage of life now with my kids. Again, you know, I have one child who has graduated. I have, like, my oldest is in grade 11 down to grade 1. Sometimes I find, of course it's not across the board, but sometimes I find more often than not that a lot of the homeschool groups and co-ops are catered at like younger kids. And even if they're not, it's a lot harder when you have a large family and there's so many ages. Again, you know, I'm sure there's going to be somebody that says, I have found one that addresses all of that, and that's great. But we just have never, I don't know, we have so much going on in our day that we've never really felt the need, to be honest with you, to join a co-op. And in terms of me having to also participate and teach or do something like that, it wasn't that long ago that I had like a toddler running around alongside 5 other kids, and it was just a lot. It was overwhelming. And the thought of like schlepping them to go to a group and then having to prepare something to teach, it was just too much for me. If it works for you and you love it and it offers something that is beneficial to your homeschool, then great. But part of the whole homeschooling experience for me is the fact that there is the freedom to do it how we want, and not to be tied down to any one specific thing, including like a group or something like that. My kids are involved in all kinds of extracurricular activities, so that's not an issue. And then aside from that, like, I would just say to just enjoy it. I know it can be stressful, and it's like anything else, you know, it really is. People are always like, how do you do it? And I could never have the patience, and but you know what? It's life and motherhood and parenting and family. It doesn't change because you homeschool, not in the sense of you have good days and bad days. You know, I try to focus on the why, try to focus on how much I've gained, not how much I've lost. Homeschooling, it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I just want to encourage you that if you're thinking about doing it, or if you've just started, or if you're not sure if you're going to continue, I know it's not for everybody, but yes, there's definitely sacrifices that need to be made. There's nothing that I've had to sacrifice, though, that has made me regret my choice to homeschool and to stay home with my kids. Not even one thing. There's just so much more that comes from homeschooling. There's so much more that we benefit from, that I benefit from, even as a parent. So many things that have been refined in me when people talk about patience and all of that. I am no more that than the next mom. But it definitely gives you way more opportunities to see those things in you that need to be worked on, for sure. But I look at that as a blessing. The time that I've had with my kids, I don't know where I read, and I don't even know what the number was, but there was like this thing I read about how many more hours you have with your kids when you homeschool them, as opposed to them being in school. And it's insane. It's insane, especially having an 18-year-old. He still lives at home. He's getting ready to do college, and I do not regret a second of it. I do not regret a second of it. So I just want to encourage you that if this is the path you think that you are about to take, or that you are just currently on, take it from somebody who has been doing this for 9 years. I wouldn't go back and do it any other way. So on that note, I hope that you were able to get some valuable information. I would love for you to subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in my next video.